My name is Margaret Lee, and I am 82 years old. For most of my life I believed in love, in family, and in the good that exists in people. I raised 3 children in this very house, cared for them through sickness, celebrated their victories, and held them close through their heartbreaks. I never thought I would live to see the day when my own flesh and blood would turn on me for something as shallow as money. But that day came, and it started with the one thing they knew I loved more than life itself. My dog, Buddy. Buddy was my shadow. An old golden retriever with a limp and the sweetest eyes. He was my comfort during the lonely nights after my husband passed away. He followed me everywhere, wagged his tail when I spoke, and rested his head on my lap when I cried. My children knew this. They knew Buddy was my heart. So when I found him lying motionless by the back porch, foam dripping from his mouth, I screamed so loudly the neighbors came running. I knelt beside him, shaking, as his body went cold in my arms. The vet later confirmed what I already suspected: poison. Someone had deliberately laced his food. My hands trembled, but not from grief alone. Deep inside, a storm of rage boiled. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to hurt Buddy. They were trying to hurt me. That night, as I sat in the kitchen with Buddy's empty bowl in front of me, I overheard them. My daughter-in-law, Kelly, whispered to my son, Mark, in the next room. She thought I was asleep. She's old. She won't last long without that mutt. The will has to be clear by now, Kelly hissed. My breath caught. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were testing me. Buddy was just the beginning. I didn't make a sound. I didn't confront them. Instead, I quietly slipped my phone into my pocket and hit the record button. Every word they said dripped with greed, and I captured it all. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed to know just how far they were willing to go. The next morning I walked slowly into the kitchen, my face pale, my hands trembling. Kelly smiled as she handed me my tea. "Drink up, Mom. You need your strength." I held the cup, staring at her. My instincts screamed that something was off. That tea smelled faintly bitter. I didn't drink it. Instead, I spilled it accidentally on purpose on the floor and watched the way her face twitched in irritation. They were going to poison me next. I knew it. And what they didn't know was that I was already watching them, recording everything, and preparing for a move they would never see coming. That night, I hid a camera in the kitchen and pretended to go to bed early. From the crack under my door, I saw Kelly slip something into my tea again. My heart pounded as I watched her walk away, confident and smug. I smiled to myself in the darkness. They thought I was weak. They thought I was helpless. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next day, I called my lawyer in secret. What I was about to do would change everything, not just for me but for them too. But as I opened my mouth to explain, something slammed against my back door so hard it rattled the windows. When I looked out, I saw a shadow moving through my yard. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just about Buddy anymore. This was war. Stay tuned, because what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family. If you're still with me, tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt betrayed by the people you love the most? Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because you don't want to miss what comes next. Next chapter is where everything begins to unravel. I didn't sleep a wink that night. My heart thudded like a drum, and every creak of the house made me jump. The shadow I saw outside had vanished by the time I grabbed my flashlight, but I knew someone had been there. Maybe they were checking to see if I was still alive. Maybe they were making sure their plan was working. Either way, it lit a fire in me I didn't know I still had at my age. I sat by the window until dawn, gripping Buddy's collar like it was my last piece of strength. I whispered to him even though he was gone. "Don't worry, boy. Mama's got this." The sun rose slowly, casting long beams through the curtains, and with it came a cold, hard resolve. When Mark came into the kitchen that morning, he put on a fake smile. "Morning, Mom. You look tired. You should rest." I stirred my tea slowly, not drinking it. "I'll rest when I'm dead, Mark." The words hung in the air, thick and sharp. His smile faltered for a split second. He didn't know I saw right through him. Kelly came in moments later, her face perfectly painted with concern. "Oh, Margaret, you really should eat something. You need your strength at your age." My age. The way she said it made me want to spit. I nodded, pretending to sip the tea she set before me. It was bitter. Bitter like the poison of betrayal. I kept my eyes low, but inside my mind was spinning. I was 2 steps ahead now. I excused myself, clutching my cup like I was going to finish it in my room. But instead I poured it down the sink and rinsed it clean. Then I retrieved the camera I hid last night and checked the footage. My heart skipped when I saw Kelly in her nightgown, stirring something into my tea with a spoon, glancing over her shoulder like a thief. I had evidence. Real evidence. But I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. Instead, I called my lawyer, Mr. Henry Cole, and told him everything. I sent him the video, the recordings, everything I had so far. "Margaret," he said gravely, "this is serious. You need to stay safe. Don't let them know you suspect anything." What a funny word. I wasn't safe in my own home, but I wasn't about to let them drive me out of it either. This was my house, my life, my rules. Later that afternoon, I saw Kelly and Mark whispering again on the porch. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught snippets. "She's old," Kelly muttered. "One more push, and we'll be done with this." Done with this. As if I was a problem to be erased. My fingers curled into fists. That night I switched the tea. I poured theirs into my cup and left it on the table, then watched from the shadows. Kelly walked in, picked up the cup, and sniffed it. She smirked and poured it down the sink, confirming what I already knew. It was poisoned. The days that followed were a dangerous game of cat and mouse. They tried to play innocent, and I pretended to be weak. They served me food I wouldn't eat, drinks I wouldn't touch, and all the while I kept collecting evidence. Every lie, every suspicious move, I documented it all. One evening, as I sat knitting by the fireplace, my granddaughter Lucy came to visit. She was only 12, sweet and innocent, with no idea of the darkness swirling around us. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mommy says you're sick. Are you?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. Grandma's not sick. Grandma's just smarter than they think." Lucy tilted her head, confused. I gave her a hug and slipped a small note into her backpack. "If anything happens to me, give this to Mr. Cole." She nodded, not fully understanding, but I knew she would do it if the time came. That night, the shadow returned. This time it was bolder. I heard the back door creak open, footsteps padding softly across the kitchen tiles. I stayed perfectly still, holding my breath, clutching the phone that was already recording. The figure moved closer. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, and I caught a glimpse of the intruder's face. It wasn't Kelly. It wasn't Mark. It was someone else. Someone I thought I could trust. Before I could even call out, they spotted me and lunged. What happened next would change everything. Don't go anywhere, because in the next chapter, you'll see just how deep this betrayal goes and what I did to turn the tables. If you're as shocked as I am, tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next part. This is only the beginning. The moment the figure lunged toward me, I stumbled back, clutching the phone to my chest. The flashlight dropped to the floor, rolling under the table, casting shaky beams across the kitchen walls. My heart pounded in my ears as I scrambled to grab a heavy iron skillet from the counter. At 82, my body wasn't as quick as it used to be, but fear gave me strength I didn't know I had. "Margaret," a low voice growled. It was familiar, but distorted with malice. The intruder stepped into the dim light. My knees nearly gave out. It was David, my own nephew. I helped raise that boy after his parents died. I paid for his school, fed him, gave him shelter when he had nowhere to go. And now here he was in my house at midnight, with a look in his eyes that chilled me to the bone. "What are you doing here?" My voice trembled, but I kept the skillet raised. He smirked, the kind of smirk that says he already won. "You shouldn't make this hard, Aunt Margaret. It's time to let go. Everyone knows you're too old to manage all this. And besides, it's not like you'll need it where you're going." My stomach churned. So you're in on this too? With Mark and Kelly? He chuckled darkly. You think they're the only ones? This isn't just about the house, Aunt Margaret. It's about everything. The money. The property. The will. You've been sitting on it for years, and it's time you handed it over. I gripped the skillet tighter. Over my dead body. His eyes narrowed. Exactly. He lunged again, but this time I swung the skillet with all my might. The loud clang echoed through the house as it connected with his shoulder, and he stumbled back with a curse. I took the chance to grab the pepper spray I kept hidden under the counter and sprayed it directly in his face. He screamed, covering his eyes, and staggered toward the door, crashing into furniture as he fled into the night. My whole body shook as I locked the door behind him. I fell to the floor, gasping for air, my heart racing so fast I thought it might give out. But even through the fear, a cold clarity settled over me. This wasn't just greed anymore, it was a conspiracy. They were working together, circling me like vultures, waiting for me to fall. Well, I wasn't going to fall. Not without a fight. The next morning I pretended nothing happened. Mark came by with his fake smile, and Kelly fluttered around the kitchen like she owned it. They didn't know David had failed. They didn't know I had every word of his confession recorded on my phone. But I needed more. I needed to know just how far they'd go. That day, I visited my lawyer again, slipping into his office quietly. Mr. Cole listened to my story, his face growing grimmer with every word. You need to be careful, Margaret. This isn't just a family dispute anymore. Dangerous. You could. I know, I interrupted. But I'm not afraid. I'm not going to run from my own house. I want to trap them. I want them to hang themselves with their own rope. He nodded slowly, sliding a document toward me. Then sign this. It gives me full authority to act on your behalf if anything happens to you. And Margaret, his eyes softened. Keep pretending to be weak. That's how you'll win. When I got home, I started my plan. I acted frilier than ever, letting them believe their schemes were working. I even faked forgetting things, stumbling around, talking about changing my will, just to make them desperate enough to show their hand. That evening, Kelly brought me dinner with an extra sweet smile. Eat up, Mom. You need your strength. I stirred the food with my fork, my eyes on hers. Thank you, dear. You're always so thoughtful. She smirked, thinking she had me. I excused myself, taking the plate to my room. Instead of eating it, I placed it in a plastic bag and hid it in the freezer. Later I'd have it tested. As I was sealing the bag, I heard footsteps on the porch. My breath caught. Slowly, I peered through the curtain. There was David again, but this time he wasn't alone. Two other figures stood with him in the shadows, whispering. One of them handed him something that glinted in the moonlight. A knife. They were planning something bigger, something final. I backed away from the window, my mind spinning. They were escalating and fast. I needed to act before they did. The next night I set the stage. I pretended to be asleep, leaving the back door unlocked just enough to tempt them in. I positioned my phone to record, hid a camera in the hallway, and waited with my heart in my throat. At around 2 a.m., the door creaked open. Slow, deliberate footsteps crept closer. I could hear their whispers, their breathing. Then I saw it, the knife glinting in David's hand as he stepped into my room. But before he could make his move, the hall light clicked on. And standing there was someone I never expected to see. Who it was, and what they said next, turned the entire game upside down. Stay tuned, because in the next chapter, the truth will blow this story wide open and nothing will be the same again. If you're on the edge of your seat like I was that night, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell because things are about to get even darker. The sudden light stunned everyone. David froze mid-step, knife clutched tight in his hand, and I could see the panic flare in his eyes. Behind him, the two other figures stepped back into the hallway shadows. My heart pounded as I squinted at the person standing by the switch. It was my eldest daughter, Susan. She had flown in from Chicago unexpectedly, and I hadn't seen her in months. We hadn't been close for years, but now she stood there with a fierce expression, her phone pointed at David. "Drop it," she commanded, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm calling the cops." David's face twisted with rage. "Stay out of this, Susan. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she snapped. "You're trying to kill her. For money." In the commotion, I reached for my own phone under the pillow and hit record. Every word, every sound, I caught it all. David's accomplices bolted out the door, leaving him cornered. He glanced at me, at Susan, at the knife in his hand, and for a moment I thought he would lunge anyway. But instead he hissed, "This isn't over," and ran out the back door into the night. I collapsed onto the bed, trembling. Susan rushed to my side. "Mom, what's going on? Why is David?" I cut her off, clutching her hand. "Susan, they're all in on it. Mark, Kelly, David, they want me dead. They poisoned Buddy. They've been poisoning me." Her eyes widened with horror. "Buddy? Mom." I nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I have proof. Videos, recordings. I've been building a case. They think I'm weak, but they don't know I'm watching them." Susan's face hardened. "Then we're going to make sure they pay for what they've done." The next few days were tense. Susan stayed with me, sleeping on the couch with a baseball bat within reach. Mark and Kelly came by, acting sweet, but I saw the flicker of fear in their eyes when they noticed Susan's presence. They whispered to each other in corners, their smiles tight and strained. I played along, continuing to act fragile and confused, but I was recording everything. Every phone call they made, every suspicious glance, every word that hinted at their plan. One afternoon, I overheard Kelly hissing into her phone. "We have to move faster. Susan's ruining everything. If she stays here, we'll lose it all." I smiled to myself. The more desperate they became, the easier it would be to catch them. That evening I took Susan aside and explained my plan. "I'm going to pretend to rewrite my will. I'll let them think they're about to get everything. That'll drive them to make their final move. When they do, we'll have them." Susan's jaw clenched. "Mom, this is risky. They could." "I know," I interrupted. "But I'm not afraid. I want them to hang themselves with their own greed." Over the next few days, I staged phone calls with my lawyer where I loudly mentioned leaving everything to Mark and Kelly. I left papers out on the table, fake documents suggesting I was changing my will in their favor. They took the bait. One night, I caught Kelly sneaking into my study, photographing the documents. I stayed silent, pretending to sleep. By the third day, their plan was clear. They were going to try again, and this time they wouldn't stop. I could see it in their eyes, hear it in their whispers. The night it happened, rain poured outside, drumming against the windows. I lay in bed, heart pounding, waiting. Susan stayed hidden in the guest room, phone ready to call the police. The house was silent except for the storm. Then, at 2 a.m., I heard the back door creak. Slow footsteps approached my room. My breath caught as I saw Mark's silhouette in the doorway, a pillow in his hands. Behind him, Kelly stood with a vial, her face cold and emotionless. I forced myself to stay still, pretending to sleep, even as my heart screamed at me to run. Mark crept closer, raising the pillow. Susan burst from the guest room with a shout, phone in one hand, a bat in the other. "Stop right there." Mark froze, and Kelly dropped the vial, which shattered on the floor, releasing a bitter chemical smell. The storm outside roared as the tension inside reached its breaking point. Susan lunged at Kelly, grabbing her arm while I sat up and shouted, "It's over. I have everything recorded. The cameras, the videos, you're done." For a moment they hesitated, caught between fight and flight. Then Mark shoved Susan aside and ran. Kelly followed, screaming curses as they disappeared into the rain. Susan helped me to my feet, shaking. "Mom, are you okay?" I nodded, clutching the phone. "Yes, but it's not over yet. We're going to finish this. On my terms." The police arrived minutes later, but Mark and Kelly were gone. The officers took my statements and the recordings, promising to investigate. But I knew this wasn't the end. They were still out there and they were desperate. What happened the next night shocked me even more than everything before. Because this time they didn't come for me directly. They came for someone I loved. Stay with me because next chapter will reveal a twist that changes everything. If you're still following this journey, tell me in the comments what you think happens next, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the shocking turn of events. I thought I had seen the worst of it. I thought they had already crossed the darkest line when they poisoned Buddy and tried to smother me in my sleep. But evil has no bottom, and greed knows no limit. It was the following evening, quiet after the storm. Susan and I had locked every door, checked every window, and set the security alarm. We thought we were safe. I was in the kitchen making tea while Susan watched TV in the living room. For the first time in days, I felt a hint of calm. Then the phone rang. It was Lucy, my granddaughter. Her voice was trembling. "Grandma, Mommy's acting weird. She keeps talking about taking me on a trip tonight. She says Daddy's waiting but I don't see him. I'm scared." My heart stopped. "Where are you, sweetheart?" "I'm at home," she whispered. "But Mommy's packing my things. She says we're going to the lake house." The lake house. The same place where my husband had built memories for us. The same place that was still in my name. And also the perfect place to make someone disappear without a trace. Susan heard me on the phone and immediately grabbed her keys. "We're going," she said firmly. I tried to call Mark's phone, but he didn't answer. I tried Kelly's, and it went straight to voicemail. A cold dread seeped through my bones. I prayed under my breath as Susan drove through the night, rain still dripping from the trees, headlights cutting through the darkness. When we reached the lake house, everything was eerily silent. The front door was unlocked. My hands shook as we stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under our feet. "Lucy," called softly. No answer. We searched room after room until we heard muffled crying coming from the basement. Susan rushed down the steps, and there she was, Lucy tied to a chair, her small face streaked with tears. "Grandma! Aunt Susan!" she sobbed. I ran to her, my knees nearly giving out, and hugged her tight. "It's okay, baby. We've got you." But as we were untying her, I heard the door slam upstairs. Heavy footsteps, the sound of something being dragged. Mark's voice boomed from above. "You shouldn't have come here." Susan froze. I pushed Lucy behind me. "Mark, stop this. You're my son." His voice was cold, almost unrecognizable. "You've left me no choice, Mother. You chose Susan over me. You chose to fight us. And now you'll lose everything." Kelly appeared at the top of the stairs, holding a gas canister. The smell of gasoline filled the air as she poured it across the floor. My stomach turned to ice. Susan stepped forward, her bat raised. "If you light that, we're all going down together." Kelly smirked, pulling a lighter from her pocket. Maybe that's what needs to happen. The tension was unbearable. One flick of her thumb, and the whole house would ignite. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the last thing they expected. A small voice recorder. I held it up high. "Every word you've said is recorded. Police have copies. My lawyer has copies. If you do this, it won't just be murder. It'll be evidence so strong they'll bury you under the prison." For a moment Kelly hesitated. Her hand shook slightly. Mark glared at her. "Do it," he barked. But before she could, headlights flooded through the windows. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police had arrived. Mark shouted in frustration, grabbed Kelly's arm, and bolted out the back door. The officers stormed in seconds later, guns drawn, shouting for everyone to stay down. Susan shielded Lucy while I raised my hands. "They went out the back," cried. The police chased them into the woods, but Mark and Kelly were gone into the darkness once again. They had escaped, but not for long. The officers untied Lucy completely and checked us over. They took my statement, gathered the gasoline canister, and secured the scene. One of them, a young cop with worried eyes, said, "Ma'am, you need to be somewhere safe. They're dangerous." But where was safe when your own children were hunting you? That night, we stayed in a hotel under police watch. I held Lucy close, whispering, "I'm not letting them win. Not now, not ever." Susan sat by the window, staring into the night. "Mom, we need to end this. They won't stop until one of us is gone." She was right. This wasn't over. The evidence I had was strong, but they were desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable. The next morning Mr. Cole called. "Margaret, we need to act now. Let me execute the will change we discussed. That'll force their hand completely." Agreed. We signed the documents that day, making sure every asset was protected under Susan's name and locked tight legally. Copies were sent to the authorities. That evening, I received an anonymous text message. "You think you've won? Watch your back." I showed it to Susan, and she looked at me with fierce determination. "We're not running anymore, Mom. We're going to set the trap." And so we did. We returned to the house, set up cameras in every room, and waited. The police stayed nearby, ready to intervene. It was the longest night of my life. Every tick of the clock was a reminder that the final confrontation was coming. And when it came, it was more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. Because this time they didn't just come for me, they brought help. Stay tuned, because next chapter will show you the moment when all hell broke loose. You don't want to miss it. If you're following this journey, tell me, what would you do if your own family turned against you? Comment below, like this video, and subscribe so you're ready for the shocking next part. Night fell over the house like a heavy blanket. Every light inside was turned off except the one dim bulb in the kitchen. Susan and I sat silently, barely breathing, while Lucy slept in the spare room under police watch. I could hear the distant hum of a patrol car parked a few houses down, but it brought little comfort. I knew my enemies weren't afraid of the law anymore. They were too far gone. Around midnight, the first sound came, a car door shutting softly somewhere in the distance. Susan looked at me with wide eyes. "They're here," she whispered. We waited, tension gripping us like a vice. Then the back fence rattled, followed by hushed voices. I peeked through the curtain just enough to see shadows moving across the yard. There were more than two this time. At least 4, maybe 5 figures creeping toward the house. Susan tightened her grip on the baseball bat. I clutched my phone, finger hovering over the emergency call button. "Stay calm," I whispered. "Let them step into the trap." The cameras I'd set earlier were already rolling. They'd capture everything, every face, every action. Tonight, there would be no denying who the monsters truly were. The back door creaked open. One by one, the figures slipped inside. I recognized Mark first. His eyes cold and determined. Behind him was Kelly, clutching something metallic in her hand. Then David, his face twisted with rage. And 2 other men I didn't know, both carrying crowbars. "Spread out," Mark ordered in a harsh whisper. "Take care of the old woman and grab the kid. No mistakes this time." My stomach churned, but I stayed hidden behind the pantry door, recording every word. Susan crouched by the hallway, ready to strike. Kelly stepped into the kitchen, scanning the room. "She's hiding," she muttered. "Find her." The 2 strangers moved toward the living room, their footsteps heavy. Mark crept up the stairs, probably to get to Lucy's room. My heart stopped. I couldn't let him reach her. I stepped out from my hiding place, pointing the phone directly at Kelly. "Looking for me," I said, my voice trembling but loud. She spun around, her eyes widening in shock. "You!" Before she could finish, Susan charged from the hallway and swung the bat, knocking the object out of Kelly's hand. It clattered to the floor, a knife. Kelly screamed, lunging at Susan, but I stepped between them, my voice fierce. "It's over, Kelly. The police are watching everything. The cameras are rolling. You're done." Mark thundered down the stairs, dragging Lucy by the arm. She screamed, "Grandma!" The sight of her struggling broke something inside me. "Let her go," shouted. He sneered. "Stay out of this, old woman, or she's the one who gets hurt first." Susan ran toward him, but one of the strangers blocked her path with a crowbar. The room erupted into chaos. Furniture toppled, glass shattered, Lucy cried out. I tried to get to her, but another man grabbed me from behind. I fought with every ounce of strength left in my body, clawing and kicking. Just as Mark raised his hand to strike Lucy, flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. Sirens wailed. The front door burst open, and police stormed in, shouting commands. Drop the weapons. Hands where we can see them. The intruders froze, caught off guard. One tried to run but was tackled immediately. Another dropped the crowbar and surrendered. Kelly shrieked as she was handcuffed. David spat curses as they dragged him out. Mark, however, refused to let go of Lucy. He held her in front of him like a shield, backing toward the kitchen. Nobody moves or she gets it, he shouted. The officers aimed their guns, but no one fired. The tension was unbearable. Lucy's small body shook in his grip, her eyes wide with terror. I stepped forward slowly, hands raised. Mark, please. You're my son. Don't do this. You can still stop. His face twisted, torn between rage and despair. You ruined everything, Mom. Everything. You chose her, Susan, over me. You always did. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I chose love. Chose what was right. You're still my son, but you've lost yourself in greed. For a brief moment, his grip on Lucy loosened. She seized the chance, biting his arm and wriggling free. She ran to me, and I pulled her behind me. The officers rushed forward, tackling Mark to the ground as he screamed and fought. Finally, it was over. They were all dragged away in handcuffs. Kelly spat venom at me, vowing revenge. David shouted that this wasn't the end. Mark just stared at me with hollow eyes as they took him away. When the house was quiet again, I collapsed into a chair, holding Lucy close. Susan knelt beside me, tears streaming down her face. It's done, Mom. You're safe now. But as I looked around at the wreckage of my home, I knew this wasn't just about safety. This was about reclaiming everything they tried to steal from me. My dignity, my peace, my life. The police assured me that with the evidence, they'd be locked away for a long time. But something in me knew they'd try to fight back, even from behind bars. And I was right, because the very next day I received a letter. No stamp, no return address, just slipped under my door. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single piece of paper with the words, "We're not done. You'll regret this." I stared at it, my chest tight. They were still out there, still plotting. And this time they weren't just after me. They were after everything I loved. Stay with me, because in the next chapter, the fight moves to the courtroom, where secrets will be exposed and alliances shattered. The war is far from over. If you're still with me, tell me in the comments. Do you think justice will finally be served? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss what comes next. The next morning, I woke to the sound of silence. Not the peaceful kind. This was the kind that pressed down on your chest, thick with dread. The house felt empty even with Susan and Lucy sleeping in the next room. The letter burned in my hand, its words echoing in my mind. We're not done. You'll regret this. I knew who had sent it. Even behind bars, Mark and Kelly had ways of reaching out. They had friends, connections, people who didn't care about law or justice. The war wasn't over. It had only changed battlegrounds. By midday, my lawyer, Mr. Cole, arrived. He looked grim. Margaret, they've hired one of the most ruthless defense attorneys in the state. They're claiming you fabricated evidence, that you framed them because of family disputes. They're painting themselves as victims. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but the sound died in my throat. Victims. They tried to kill me. They kidnapped Lucy. The police saw it. They're saying the police stormed in without cause and that the videos were altered, Mr. Cole said. It's going to trial, and it's going to be messy. They're going to dig into every part of your life to discredit you. Susan stepped forward, her eyes blazing. Then we'll fight. We have the truth on our side. I nodded, but inside I felt the tremor of fear. Courts don't always run on truth. They run on power, influence, and who can tell the better story. And my children were willing to lie about anything to save themselves. The trial began 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, curious onlookers. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, my heart pounding as Mark and Kelly were escorted in wearing suits, looking like angels who had been wronged. David followed, his smirk making my skin crawl. When the judge entered, the tension was suffocating. The proceedings began, and the defense immediately attacked my credibility. They showed old medical records, trying to suggest I was senile. They twisted my words, implying I had a history of paranoia. They even brought up arguments I had with Mark years ago, making me look bitter and vengeful. I stayed quiet, letting them spin their lies. When it was our turn, Mr. Cole played the recordings, Kelly admitting to poisoning my tea, David confessing in the kitchen, Mark threatening me at the lake house. The courtroom gasped as the videos from the security cameras rolled, showing everything. The defense fought back, claiming the videos were doctored, but the forensic experts confirmed they were authentic. I watched Mark's face turn pale, watched Kelly's hands tremble. Then came the witness testimonies. Susan took the stand first, her voice steady as she described the night they attacked us. She didn't sugarcoat a thing. Lucy, too young to testify formally, still gave a statement through a child advocate, confirming she had been tied up by Kelly. The defense tried to twist everything, but each time they struck, we struck back harder. For every lie they told, we had proof to shut it down. But the trial took its toll. Day after day, I sat there listening to my own children speak against me, calling me crazy, greedy, manipulative. Each word cut deeper than any knife. At night, I cried silently so Susan and Lucy wouldn't hear. On the final day, the courtroom was tense. The defense made one last desperate plea, painting Mark and Kelly as misunderstood children pushed too far by an overbearing mother. Then Mr. Cole stood up and delivered a closing argument that sent chills down my spine. "This is not a case of a bitter old woman making things up," he said, his voice firm. "This is a case of greed so deep it led to attempted murder. This woman raised these people, gave them everything, and they repaid her with poison and betrayal. Look at the evidence. Look at the videos. Look at the fear in her granddaughter's eyes. Justice demands only one verdict." The jury deliberated for hours. When they finally returned, my hands were ice cold. The foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendants guilty on all counts." The room erupted. I let out a shaky breath, tears streaming down my face. Mark and Kelly screamed protests as they were dragged away. David hung his head, defeated. I thought it was over. I thought justice had finally been served. But as they passed me, Mark looked straight into my eyes and whispered, "This isn't the end, Mother. You'll see." Chill ran through me. Even in chains, his hatred burned. The judge sentenced them to lengthy prison terms, and the courtroom emptied. Susan hugged me tight. "It's done, Mom. You're free now." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe the nightmare was finally behind us. But that night, as we returned home, I found another letter waiting on my doorstep. This one had only 2 words: tick-tock. My blood ran cold. Whoever was helping them wasn't finished. And the very next morning, someone set fire to my car. The flames lit up the driveway, a warning I couldn't ignore. Next chapter will reveal the terrifying escalation of their revenge and the shocking alliance that nearly cost me everything. If you're still with me, share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. The darkest part of this story is still to come. The fire burned bright against the early morning sky, orange flames licking up the sides of my car, black smoke curling into the air. Susan dragged Lucy back into the house while I stood frozen at the doorway, the heat warming my face even from a distance. The fire department arrived quickly, but by the time the flames were out, there was nothing left but a smoldering shell. The police came next, questioning me again, taking photos, writing reports. One officer, a tall man with a serious expression, pulled me aside. "Mrs. Lee, this wasn't random. They used an accelerant." This was deliberate. "I know who did this," I said, my voice steady despite the fear twisting inside me. "They may be in prison, but they have people working for them. They want to scare me." The officer nodded grimly. "We'll increase patrols around your house, but I need you to be careful. Stay alert. If you see anything suspicious, call us immediately." After they left, I walked around the ashes of what used to be my car. The smell of burnt rubber clung to the air. On the windshield's charred remains, I noticed something glinting. I bent down and picked it up, a single silver coin. On it someone had scratched 2 words. "Next time." My hand shook. Whoever was helping Mark and Kelly was close, watching us, bold enough to leave a calling card. Susan placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mom, we need to get out of here. Stay at a hotel, leave the house, something. This isn't safe." I looked at her, my jaw set. This is my home. I'm not running from them. If they want to come, let them. I'm ready. That evening we met with Mr. Cole again. He was furious about the arson, demanding the police provide full protection. But he also brought news that chilled me to the core. "Margaret, I discovered something in the court files. Someone's been accessing sealed evidence. Documents were leaked. Bank records, property deeds. Everything they need to find weaknesses. They're not just trying to scare me," I whispered. "They're planning something bigger." As night fell, Susan insisted we stay awake in shifts. I took the first watch, sitting by the window with a flashlight and a cup of coffee. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock. Around midnight, I saw movement by the fence. My heart raced as I grabbed the flashlight and shined it outside. A figure darted into the trees, too fast for me to identify. "Mom!" Susan called from the hallway, bat in hand. "Someone's out there," I said. "They're watching us." We called the police, but by the time they arrived, the intruder was gone. No footprints, no evidence, just the lingering sense of being hunted. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a distorted voice said, "You think prison can hold us? You think cameras and cops can protect you? This is bigger than you, Margaret. Bigger than your house, bigger than your will. You should have just died quietly." The line went dead. My hands trembled as I hung up. That afternoon, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Jack Harris. He was rough around the edges, but he had a reputation for getting results. Jack listened to my story carefully, his expression darkening. "This isn't just a family feud anymore. They've pulled in outsiders, people who don't mind getting their hands dirty. I'll dig into this, but you need to be ready for whatever comes next." Days passed with no sign of the attackers, but the tension never left. We lived on edge, jumping at every sound. Then Jack called with a breakthrough. "Margaret, I found something. There's a gang in the area that's been working with David. They're being paid to finish what he started. How much time do we have?" I asked, my heart sinking. "Not much. They're planning to hit the house again soon." That night, Susan, Lucy, and I huddled together, the fear palpable. I locked every door and window, set up extra cameras, even placed chairs under the doorknobs. I wasn't going to let them catch us off guard. At around 3 a.m. the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. Lucy whimpered, clutching my arm. "Grandma, I'm scared." I held her close, whispering, "It's okay, baby. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." The sound of footsteps approached from outside. Then the front door handle rattled. Someone was trying to break in. Susan raised the bat, her breath quick. I held my phone, finger on the emergency call button. The footsteps moved to the back door, then the windows. They were testing every entry point. Suddenly, the glass in the kitchen shattered. 3 masked figures climbed inside. Susan swung the bat, knocking one down, but the others rushed at us. I screamed, clutching Lucy tight, as chaos erupted in the dark. Then, just as quickly as it started, the room lit up with blinding light. "Freeze! Police!" Officers stormed in, tackling the intruders. Shots were fired outside, shouts filling the air. When it was over, 2 men were arrested on the spot, while one escaped into the night. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Susan knelt beside me, holding Lucy close. The police assured us the gang was being dismantled, but my heart knew better. One had escaped, and as long as even one remained, we weren't safe. Later that night, Jack came by, his face grim. "Margaret, you need to leave this house. They'll keep coming." But I also found something: they're being funded from inside the prison. Mark is orchestrating everything from his cell. I stared at him, my anger boiling over. Then it's time I end this myself. Because if the law couldn't stop them, I would. In the next chapter, I take the fight directly to the source, and what I uncover will shake you to your core. If you've stayed with me this far, tell me, what would you do if your own blood tried to destroy you? Comment below, like this video, and subscribe because the next part is where everything explodes. The next morning, I woke with a decision carved deep into my bones. Enough was enough. They had poisoned my dog, tried to kill me, kidnapped Lucy, burned my car, and sent their masked animals to my house in the dead of night. If the police couldn't cut the head off this snake, I would. I told Susan my plan, and she grabbed my arm. "Mom, no. Too dangerous. Let the authorities handle it." I looked her straight in the eyes. The authorities have failed me every step of the way. They arrest them, and they still find a way to hurt us. I have to end this my way. Susan knew she couldn't stop me. Instead, she insisted on coming with me. Together with Jack Harris, the retired cop I had hired, we drove to the prison where Mark was being held. Jack had managed to pull strings for a special visit, under the pretense of gathering information for the investigation. The prison was cold, gray, and oppressive. When they led Mark into the visitation room, he was wearing an orange jumpsuit, but the smirk on his face made him look like he owned the place. He sat down across from me, leaning back casually. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Mother dearest comes to visit." I'm touched. I leaned forward, my voice like steel. "Stop this, Mark. Stop sending people after me. After Lucy. You've lost. Accept it." His smile widened. "Lost? Oh, Mother, this isn't a game of winning or losing. This is about taking what's mine. You think a few bars can stop me? I run things from here. You're not safe anywhere." I felt my blood boil, but I stayed calm. "You've already thrown away your life. Don't drag others down with you." He chuckled. "Others? Oh, you mean the men who came to your house? They were just the beginning. I have friends in places you can't imagine. People who owe me favors. You think locking me up changes that? I can reach you anytime I want." Susan slammed her hand on the table. "You're insane. You tried to kill your own mother for money." Mark's face hardened. "Don't talk to me about family. She gave you everything and left me scraps. I was always second. Always less. This is her fault. All of it." I leaned even closer, locking eyes with him. "You want to blame me? Fine. But listen carefully, Mark. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You've underestimated me for the last time." His smirk faded slightly. "What are you saying?" I smiled coldly. "I've taken every asset you wanted. The will you were so desperate to control. It's locked tighter than Fort Knox. Susan owns it now, and there's nothing you can do. The evidence we have against you, every tape, every recording, every video, is secured in multiple places. Even if something happens to me, you'll still rot in this cage until the day you die." For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. I stood up, my voice calm but firm. "This war you started is over, Mark. You've lost everything. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never hurt us again." The guards escorted him out, but as he was led away, he shouted, "You think this is over, Mother? Watch your back. I'll burn everything you love to the ground." His words echoed in my head, but I didn't let them break me. Not anymore. On the way back, Jack received a call. "We got a lead," he said. "The one who escaped your house during the last attack. We found his hideout. He has documents, orders signed by Mark, bank accounts linked to Kelly's family. They were funneling money to bribe guards and hire hitmen. It was the proof we needed to shut down their entire operation. The police raided the hideout that night, seizing everything. The man was arrested and confessed under questioning, confirming Mark was orchestrating everything. But just as we thought we were finally closing the book, something unexpected happened. Kelly escaped custody during a prison transfer. The news hit me like a punch to the chest. They said she had help, that someone on the inside had been paid off. Now she was out there, free, furious, and more dangerous than ever. Jack immediately insisted on moving us to a safe house. Susan and Lucy packed bags, and we left under police escort. The safe house was remote, surrounded by trees, with guards stationed outside. For a few days it felt almost peaceful. Until the night I woke to the sound of someone whispering outside my window. I crept to the glass and peered out. In the moonlight, I saw a figure standing just beyond the fence. She was thin, her hair wild, her face twisted with rage. "Kelly." She lifted her hand slowly, pointing at me, and mouthed the words, "You're next." Before I could react, she vanished into the woods. The police searched the area but found nothing. They said she must have slipped away into the darkness. That was when I realized the final confrontation was coming. There was no running from it. One way or another, this would end soon. And when it did, only one of us would be left standing. In the next chapter, the final chapter, everything comes to a head in a showdown that will leave you breathless. Justice, revenge, and survival collide in the most shocking way possible. Don't miss it. If you've followed me this far, comment your thoughts, like this video, and subscribe, because the ending will leave you speechless. The final night began with an eerie stillness. The air was heavy, the trees outside unmoving, as if the world itself was holding its breath. We stayed locked inside the safe house, the police stationed at every corner, their radios crackling with quiet updates. Susan sat on the couch, gripping Lucy's hand. Jack stood by the window, his pistol drawn. And me. I sat in the middle of the room, staring at the door, waiting. I knew Kelly was coming. I could feel it. The rage burning inside her wouldn't let her hide forever. She wanted revenge, and she wanted to watch me suffer. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. The silence was deafening. Then, just as my eyelids began to grow heavy, I heard it, the faint crunch of leaves outside. Jack tensed. "She's here." Susan pulled Lucy close, her knuckles white. I rose slowly to my feet, my heart pounding but steady. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. The front door rattled, then stopped. Moments later, the back window shattered. Kelly crawled through the broken glass like a feral animal, her eyes wild, her hair tangled. She clutched a knife in her hand, the blade glinting in the dim light. "You ruined everything, Margaret," she screamed, her voice shaking with madness. "You took my husband, my life, my future. You should have died when we gave you the chance." The police outside shouted commands, but Kelly didn't care. She lunged at me, knife raised high. Time seemed to slow. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and swung with all the strength left in my body. The lamp connected with her arm, sending the knife flying across the room. She screamed, clawing at me with her free hand, but I pushed back with everything I had. Jack rushed in, tackling her to the ground. The officers stormed inside seconds later, pinning her as she kicked and screamed like a trapped animal. Susan shielded Lucy, who was sobbing in terror. Kelly thrashed violently, spitting venomous words. "You think this is over, old woman? You think you've won?" I walked up to her, my voice cold and calm. "No, Kelly. This was over the moment you decided to poison Buddy. You thought you were testing the will, but you were testing me. And you lost." The officers dragged her out, screaming and cursing, while the red and blue lights flashed outside. The nightmare was finally over. The following weeks were a blur. Kelly was caught and sentenced to life without parole. Additional evidence tied her and Mark to numerous crimes, ensuring they would never see freedom again. The gang they worked with was dismantled, their connections severed. The house was repaired, the cameras removed, and for the first time in months, the air felt light again. Lucy laughed freely, Susan smiled without fear, and I could sit on my porch without looking over my shoulder. One morning, I visited Buddy's grave in the backyard. I knelt by the little wooden cross, tears streaming down my cheeks. "We did it, boy," I whispered. "They'll never hurt us again. Thank you for giving me the strength to fight." The sun rose, warm and golden, washing away the shadows that had haunted us for so long. I learned something through all of this, a lesson I want you to carry with you. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. But no matter how dark things get, you must never let fear win. Stand your ground, protect what you love, and fight back with everything you have. Because in the end, it's not about what they take from you. It's about what they can never break: your spirit. To everyone watching this, thank you for staying with me through this journey. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved? I want to hear your stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video because your strength might just inspire someone else to fight back too. This was my story, and I survived.